Welcome to Tech Explained. Today we're covering Domain 7 of the CISSP exam.
Okay.
We're going to explore what keeps businesses running, smoothly, even when they're facing cyber attacks,
Yeah.
natural disasters, or even just good old-fashioned human errors.
Yeah, it's all about resilience, making sure business not only survives those unexpected punches, but bounces back even stronger.
Let's start with business continuity management,
Okay.
or BCM.
Yeah.
What's the core idea there?
So imagine a major cyber attack, right?
Mhm.
One that brings a company's operations to like a screeching halt. BCM is that difference between, just a chaotic scramble and a well-rehearsed recovery plan. It's about having that foresight to identify those mission-critical systems and processes, prioritizing people's safety above all else, and making sure that the business can weather, even the most disruptive events. Think of it as a strategic safety net built on thorough analysis and, meticulous planning.
So it's not about, preventing every single problem,
Right.
because that's practically impossible. It's about having a solid plan to keep the essential parts running.
Exactly. It starts with something called a business impact analysis, or BIA. It's like a stress test for your organization. You identify those processes, those systems that are absolutely essential, the ones that if they went down could cripple the whole business,
The vital organs.
Yes, exactly. Think about what are the vital organs for your organization.
Okay, so you've identified these critical functions. What's next?
All right, so now we got to figure out how much downtime the business can actually tolerate. For each of those vital functions, right, this is where these all-important time measurements come in. You've got RPO, RTO, WRT, and MTD. These are like the lifelines of BCM, right? They dictate how much data loss is acceptable and how quickly things need to be back up and running.
Those acronyms sound pretty technical. Can you break them down for us?
Absolutely. RPO stands for Recovery Point Objective. It tells you how much data loss is acceptable for a particular system or process, For example, let's say your email system has an RPO of 24 hours. That means you're willing to lose up to a day's worth of emails, right, in a worst-case scenario. For some businesses, that might be no big deal, right? But for others, like a financial institution, losing even a few hours of transaction data could be disastrous.
So RPO is about understanding the value of your data.
Right.
And setting those realistic limits on how much you can afford to lose. What about RTO?
So RTO, or Recovery Time Objective, focuses on getting your systems back online. It measures that maximum tolerable downtime for a critical system. Let's say your online store has an RTO of 2 hours. That means you need to be able to restore that system and have it operational within 2 hours of a disruption.
Knowing that these time measurements are crucial, I'm curious, have you ever encountered situations where companies set unrealistic RTOs or RPOs?
No, absolutely.
What were the consequences?
Yeah, one common mistake is setting, overly aggressive RTOs without fully understanding the complexity of their systems or the resources that are actually required for recovery. I once worked with a company that set an RTO of 15 minutes for their entire website, which is incredibly ambitious for any organization. And they hadn't invested in the necessary infrastructure or conducted sufficient testing to achieve that goal. When a major outage occurred, they ended up being down for almost 2 days, causing significant financial losses and, reputational damage.
So it's a balancing act, right?
Exactly.
You need to be ambitious.
You need to be ambitious.
But also realistic and taking into account your resources.
Right, and your capabilities.
Okay.
It's about finding that sweet spot, between minimizing downtime and ensuring a smooth and successful recovery. Now, besides RPO and RTO, we also have WRT, or Work Recovery Time. This measures the time it takes to verify data integrity and get everything back in working order, after a system is restored.
So it's not just about flipping the switch and hoping for the best.
Exactly.
There's a whole process of verification.
Yes.
Fine-tuning, just to make sure everything's running as it should.
Precisely. Think of it as, getting the engine running smoothly after jump-starting a car.
Okay.
And finally, we have MTD, or Maximum Tolerable Downtime. This is the big picture number. It's the absolute maximum time that a critical system or process can be down before it starts having severe consequences for the business. This could be anything from losing customers and revenue to facing, regulatory fines or even legal repercussions.
That's not no return. The amount of downtime your business can withstand before facing irreversible damage.
You got it. And MTD is always going to be greater than or equal to the combined RTO and WRT.
So once you've figured out these time measurements, what do you actually do with them?
Well, they become the cornerstone of your recovery plans. There are two main types: business continuity plans, or BCPs, and disaster recovery plans, or DRPs. BCPs focus on keeping those crucial business processes running, no matter what, Let's go back to the payroll example, If the automated system crashes, the BCP would outline how to manually process payroll, ensuring that employees still get paid on time.
And DRPs are more tech-focused.
Precisely. A DRP would detail how to recover the payroll system itself, what backups need to be restored, what hardware needs to be replaced, the step-by-step process to get that system back online and functioning correctly. Think of it as the technical manual for rebuilding a critical system.
So BCPs are about keeping the business going,
Yeah.
and DRPs are about getting the technology back in shape. But creating these plans is just the first step, right?
Absolutely. You have to test them
Yeah.
regularly to make sure they actually work. This could involve anything from simple tabletop exercises, where you walk through the plan step by step, to more complex simulations that involve actually switching over to backup systems.
So it's like a fire drill for your IT system.
Exactly.
You need to practice your response to make sure everyone knows what to do when the alarm bells ring.
Exactly. And just like with fire drills, the more you practice, the more prepared you'll be when a real emergency happens. But even with the best plans in place, sometimes things can go wrong, and that's where data recovery and redundancy strategies come into play. After all, data is often the most valuable asset a company has.
That's for sure. Losing important data can cripple a business faster than almost anything else. Let's talk about backups. Everyone knows they're important, but can you explain why they're such a big deal in the context of cybersecurity?
Think of backups as your insurance policy for your data. They provide a safety net against data loss, which, as we know, can happen for all sorts of reasons. A server crashing, a natural disaster wiping out your entire data center, or even a malicious attack, like ransomware that specifically targets your data, encrypts it, and holds it hostage.
So backups are about having a way to get your data back
Exactly.
if the worst happens.
Yeah. But it's not just about having backups. It's about having the right kind of backups and having a clear strategy for using them.
That's an interesting approach to backups. I've also heard arguments for cloud-based backup solutions. What are your thoughts on those?
Cloud backups are becoming increasingly popular. And for good reason. They offer several advantages over traditional, on-premises backups: scalability, accessibility, and cost-effectiveness. You don't need to invest in expensive hardware or manage, complex backup infrastructure. However, there are also some considerations. You need to carefully vet your cloud provider, ensure they have robust security measures in place, and understand the implications of, data sovereignty and compliance regulations.
So it's about choosing the right backup solution
All right.
that aligns with your specific needs
Yes.
and your risk tolerance.
Exactly.
Okay.
Now, you mentioned different types of backups. There are 3 key strategies: full, incremental, and differential backups. Each has its own pros and cons, mainly relating to storage space and recovery time. Full backups are like taking a complete snapshot of your data at a specific point in time. They provide the most comprehensive protection, but also require the most storage space and take the longest to create.
So if you have a lot of data,
Yeah.
doing full backups every day might not be feasible.
Exactly, and that's where incremental backups come in. They only copy the files that have changed since the last backup, whether it was a full backup or another incremental backup. Think of it as saving only the changes you've made to a document, rather than saving the entire document every time.
So it's a more efficient way to back up. But what happens if you need to restore from an incremental backup? Does it take longer?
It can. You have to go through a chain of incremental backups, starting with the last full backup and then applying each subsequent incremental backup until you reach the desired point in time. This can be a time-consuming process, especially if you have a long chain of incrementals.
So there's a trade-off between
Yes.
backup speed and recovery time.
Exactly. And then we have differential backups. They back up all the changes made since the last full backup. So each differential backup gets progressively larger. But you only ever need 2 backups to restore: the most recent full backup and the most recent differential backup.
So they strike a balance
Yes.
between full and incremental backups,
Right.
offering a compromise
Yeah.
between storage space and recovery time.
Precisely. Now, there's one little technical detail that's often overlooked, but plays a crucial role in the backup process.
Yeah.
The archive bit.
The archive bit. What's that?
Imagine you have a giant library with thousands of books. Every time you borrow a book and make some notes in it, you put a little sticky note on the cover to remind yourself that it needs to be returned. The archive bit is like that sticky note, but for your computer files.
So it's a way for the computer to keep track
Exactly.
of which files have been modified
Yes.
and need to be backed up.
Yeah, exactly. When a file is created or modified, the archive bit is flipped to on. Once the file is backed up, the archive bit is flipped back to off. It's a simple but essential mechanism that ensures that your backups are always up to date.
It's fascinating how these seemingly small details can make such a big difference in data recovery. Okay, so we've covered backups. What other strategies can we use to keep our systems up and running, even when facing hardware failures?
Let's talk about RAID, which stands for Redundant Array of Independent Disks. It's a way to use multiple hard drives together, not just for extra storage space, but for performance and protection against data loss.
RAID, I've heard that term before. But can you explain it in simple terms?
Think of it this way. RAID is like having a team of movers instead of just one. If you have a lot of boxes to move, having multiple movers working together makes the job faster and more efficient. Similarly, RAID combines multiple hard drives into a single logical unit, allowing you to distribute data across multiple disks.
So RAID is about teamwork and efficiency. Are there different types of RAID configurations?
Yes, there are several different RAID levels, each with its own strengths and weaknesses. RAID 0, also known as striping, is all about speed. It spreads data across multiple drives, allowing for faster read and write operations. Think of it as having multiple lanes on a highway, allowing cars to travel faster. However, RAID 0 offers no redundancy. If one drive fails, you lose all your data.
It sounds like RAID 0 is like driving a sports car.
Yeah.
Fast and exciting.
Yeah.
But with higher risks, what if you prioritize data protection over speed?
Then RAID 1, or mirroring, is a good option. It creates an exact copy of your data on 2 or more drives. Think of it as having a backup dancer who mirrors every move of the lead dancer. If one drive fails, you still have a complete copy of your data on the other drive.
So RAID 1 is like having an understudy.
Yes.
Ready to step in if the lead performer can't go on. It's more reliable,
Yes.
but also requires more storage space.
Exactly. Now, if you're looking for a balance between speed and redundancy, RAID 5 is a popular choice. It uses a technique called parity, which is like having a spare tire in your car. If one drive fails, the parity information can be used to reconstruct the missing data. RAID 5 requires at least 3 drives, and it offers a good compromise between performance and data protection.
So RAID 5 is like having the best of both worlds.
Yeah.
Some of the speed of RAID 0
Right.
and some of the redundancy of RAID 1.
Precisely. And there's also RAID 6, which is similar to RAID 5, but it uses double parity, allowing it to tolerate the failure of 2 drives without losing data. It's even more resilient, but it also requires more drives and can be a bit slower.
This is starting to sound like choosing the right type of car insurance.
Yes.
You have different levels of coverage with varying costs and benefits.
That's a great analogy. Choosing the right RAID level is all about balancing your needs for speed, redundancy, and cost. But remember that RAID is not a substitute for backups. It protects you from hardware failures. But it won't save you from things like accidental deletion, viruses, or other types of data corruption.
So it's just one piece of the data protection puzzle. What other strategies can we use to keep our systems up and running, even in the face of a major disaster?
Let's talk about recovery sites, which are backup locations where you can relocate your critical systems and data if your primary site becomes unavailable. It's like having a spare office or data center you can switch to if things go wrong at your main location.
So it's like having a backup plan for your backup plan.
Right.
Tell me more about these recovery sites.
Just like with backups in RAID, there are different types of recovery sites, each with its own level of readiness and cost. We'll cover those in detail when we come back. We left off talking about recovery sites, those backup locations that can really save the day when a major disaster strikes. Just like with backups in RAID, there are different types of recovery sites, each with its own level of readiness and cost.
Okay, I'm all ears. Walk me through the options.
So let's start with the most basic type. A cold site. Think of it as a bare-bones shell of a facility. It might have some basic infrastructure like power and cooling, but that's about it. No servers, no data, no people.
So like an empty warehouse waiting to be transformed.
Exactly. Cold sites are the cheapest option, but they also take the longest to get up and running. You need to bring in all your equipment, install your software, and configure everything from scratch. It's a bit like starting from square one.
So a good option if you have a lot of time to recover, but not ideal if you need things back online quickly.
Right. And that's where a warm site comes in. A warm site is a step up from a cold site. It has more of the basic infrastructure in place, like server racks, cabling, and maybe even some networking equipment.
So like having a partially furnished apartment, you still need to bring in your furniture and personal belongings, but the basic utilities are already connected.
That's a great analogy. Warm sites strike a balance between cost and recovery time. They're more expensive than cold sites, but you can get your operations back up and running much faster.
What if you need to get back online immediately? What kind of recovery site would you need for that?
That's where hot sites come. In a hot site is a fully equipped data center, a mirror image of your primary site with servers, software, and data already in place and ready to go.
So it's like having an understudy who knows all the lines and can step in at a moment's notice. That's incredible. So it's like having an instant failover for your entire business.
You got it.
Wow.
And to make things even more flexible, there are variations of hot sites like mobile sites.
Mobile sites, you mean like data centers on wheels?
Exactly. Think of a shipping container packed with servers and networking equipment that can be transported to wherever it's needed.
So you can basically bring a fully functional data center to your doorstep? What about a mirrored site? Is that even more advanced?
A mirrored site is the ultimate recovery solution. It's a fully operational data center running in parallel with your primary site, constantly syncing data and applications.
So it's like having a twin for your data center, always up to date and ready to take over seamlessly.
Exactly. Mirrored sites are the most expensive option, but they offer virtually zero downtime.
It's like having a heart bypass surgery, where the backup heart is already connected and pumping blood while the surgeons work on the main heart.
Exactly.
This is fascinating. It's incredible to see how many different options there are for ensuring business continuity. We've covered so much ground already, from BCM and recovery sites to data backups and RAID configurations. What's next on our cybersecurity journey?
Now let's shift gears and talk about forensic science, a critical aspect of cybersecurity that often gets overlooked. It's like the detective work of the digital world.
Forensic science, you mean like CSI, but for computers?
Exactly. Digital forensics is all about investigating cybercrime and security incidents, gathering evidence, and figuring out exactly what happened. It's about following the digital trail and piecing together the puzzle.
Okay, so let's say a company has been breached. Where do they even begin with a forensic investigation?
The first and most crucial step is securing the digital crime scene. This means preventing any unauthorized access to the affected systems and preserving all potential evidence.
So it's about treating the compromised computers and networks like a physical crime scene, making sure no evidence is tampered with.
Precisely. But securing a digital crime scene can be tricky. You want to stop the bleeding, so to speak, and prevent further damage, but you also don't want to do anything that might destroy valuable evidence. It's a delicate balancing act.
So it's like trying to catch a butterfly without crushing its wings. You need to be quick and careful.
That's a great analogy, and that's where having a clear incident response plan is critical. It should outline the steps for securing the scene, who's authorized to access the affected systems, and what evidence needs to be collected and preserved.
So it's about having a playbook for when the unexpected happens. What kind of evidence are investigators looking for in these investigations?
Digital evidence can take many forms: emails, chat logs, internet browsing, history files stored on hard drives, even deleted files that can sometimes be recovered.
So it's not just about finding the smoking gun file, it's about piecing together a digital trail that reveals what happened.
Exactly. And one of the most challenging types of evidence to collect is live evidence, also known as volatile data. This is data that's stored in a computer's RAM CPU cache or other temporary storage locations.
Why is it so challenging?
Because volatile data disappears as soon as a computer is powered off. So if you want to collect this evidence, you need to use specialized tools and techniques to capture it before it's gone forever.
So it's like trying to catch smoke. It's constantly changing and can vanish in an instant.
That's a vivid way to put it. Live evidence can be crucial in understanding what an attacker was doing on a system. But it's also highly perishable now once you've collected the evidence. The next step is to analyze it. This involves using various forensic techniques, kind of like examining the evidence under a microscope.
What are some of those forensic techniques?
There are several different techniques, each designed to extract specific types of information. Media analysis focuses on examining physical storage devices like hard drives, even if they've been damaged or tampered with.
So even if the data has been fragmented or corrupted, there might still be a way to recover it.
Exactly. Then there's software analysis, which delves into the code of malware or suspicious applications, trying to understand what they were designed to do and who created them.
So it's about dissecting the attacker's tools and techniques.
Precisely. And then there's network analysis, which involves scrutinizing network traffic and logs to trace the attacker's movements, identify compromised systems, and uncover how they gained access to the network in the first place.
It's fascinating to see how these different forensic techniques can be used to build a complete picture of the attack. What happens to this evidence once it's collected and analyzed?
The next step depends on the type of investigation. There are 4 main categories: criminal, civil, regulatory, and administrative investigations.
So the same incident could potentially trigger multiple types of investigations.
Absolutely. Imagine a data breach that exposes sensitive customer information. This could lead to a criminal investigation by law enforcement, a civil lawsuit by affected customers, a regulatory inquiry by a government agency, and an internal administrative investigation by the company itself. It's like a ripple effect, with the incident creating waves that spread outward in different directions.
That sounds overwhelming. What's the difference between these types of investigations?
Criminal investigations focus on violations of criminal law, aiming to prosecute and punish the perpetrators.
So criminal investigations are about bringing the bad guys to justice. What about civil investigations?
Civil investigations involve disputes between individuals or organizations, typically seeking financial compensation for damages.
So civil investigations are about holding people accountable for their actions and seeking restitution for any harm caused.
Exactly. Now, regulatory investigations look into compliance with specific industry regulations, often resulting in fines or other penalties.
So regulatory investigations are about making sure everyone is playing by the rules. What about administrative investigations?
Administrative investigations are internal inquiries conducted by an organization to determine the root cause of an incident and improve its security posture.
So administrative investigations are about learning from your mistakes and making sure you're better prepared for the future. This whole discussion of forensic science has been really enlightening. It's amazing to see how many different facets there are to cybersecurity.
It certainly is a complex and fascinating field, but remember, digital forensics is only one part of the equation. We also need to talk about incident response, which is the process of handling security incidents and breaches effectively.
Incident response. It's a term that gets thrown around a lot, but what does it actually entail?
Incident response is all about having a plan for when things go wrong, because as we've discussed, they inevitably will at some point.
So it's about being prepared for the inevitable security hiccups, breaches, and attacks.
Exactly. But before we dive into the process, let's make sure we're all on the same page about the difference between an event and an incident.
Okay, I'm all ears. What's the distinction?
An event is any observable occurrence on your systems or networks. It could be something as simple as someone logging in, a file being saved, or a website being accessed. Think of it like the background noise of your digital world, the constant hum of activity.
So it's just the everyday chatter of your digital world. Most events are completely normal and harmless.
Precisely. An incident, however, is an event that has a negative impact on your organization. Think about a server crashing, a password being brute forced, or an attacker getting through your firewall.
So it's when that everyday chatter turns into a red alert.
Exactly. Incident response is about having a plan to deal with those red alerts, to minimize the damage and get things back to normal as quickly and efficiently as possible.
You mentioned that things will go wrong.
Yeah.
What are some of the most common mistakes companies make when it comes to incident response?
One common mistake is not having a clear incident response plan in place. This can lead to chaos and confusion when an incident occurs, with people running around like chickens with their heads cut off, not knowing what to do or who to contact.
So it's like trying to fight a fire without a fire hose. You might have good intentions, but you're not going to be very effective.
Exactly. Another common mistake is not investing in adequate training and resources for your incident response team. These folks are the first responders in the digital world, and they need to be equipped with the right knowledge, skills, and tools to handle a crisis effectively.
So it's like sending firefighters into a burning building without proper training or equipment. It's a recipe for disaster.
Precisely. And yet another common mistake is not conducting regular incident response exercises. Just like with fire drills, practicing your incident response procedures helps ensure that everyone knows what to do when a real incident occurs.
So it's about getting everyone on the same page and making sure they can execute the plan smoothly when the pressure is on.
Exactly. Incident response is all about preparation and practice.
Okay, so let's say a company has a solid incident response plan and a well-trained team. What are the key steps involved in responding to an incident?
There are lots of different incident response frameworks out there, but they all share the same fundamental goals. Be prepared, detect incidents, quickly respond, effectively recover smoothly, and learn from your experience.
So it's a cycle of preparation, detection, response, recovery, and learning.
Exactly. And it all starts with preparation, which we've already touched upon. You need to have a clear incident response policy, a well-defined process, a trained team, and the right tools in place.
It's about laying the groundwork before the storm hits, so you're not scrambling to figure things out in the middle of a crisis.
Precisely, preparation is key, because it allows you to respond to incidents in a coordinated and controlled manner. Think of it like having a well-stocked emergency kit ready to go in case of a natural disaster.
Okay, so you've got your plan, your team, your tools. What happens next?
The next stage is detection, which is all about identifying and recognizing security incidents as quickly as possible. This can involve monitoring your systems and networks for suspicious activity, analyzing logs for unusual patterns, and responding to alerts from your security tools.
So detection is about being vigilant and recognizing the early warning signs of a security incident.
Exactly. The sooner you detect an incident, the sooner you can contain it and minimize the damage.
What happens once you've detected an incident?
The next phase is triage, where you evaluate the situation and determine the severity of the incident.
So triage is about gathering information, analyzing the situation, and deciding on a course of action.
Exactly. It involves gathering information, analyzing logs, and interviewing users to understand the scope and impact of the incident. This helps you prioritize your response and allocate resources effectively.
Right, because you don't want to overreact to a minor issue,
Yeah.
but you also don't want to underestimate a major threat.
Precisely. Triage helps you strike that balance. And speaking of major threats, there's a crucial point here. If the incident is so severe that it's going to exceed your maximum tolerable downtime, it's no longer just an incident, it's a disaster.
So it's like calling the National Guard when a hurricane hits. It's a whole different level of response.
Exactly. And that's where your business continuity and disaster recovery plans come into play.
Okay, so back to incident response. What happens after triage?
The next phase is containment and eradication, where you take steps to isolate the affected systems, stop the spread of the attack, and remove any malicious code or attackers from your environment.
So containment and eradication are about stopping the bleeding and getting rid of the threat. What happens once the threat is neutralized?
We move into the recovery phase, where the focus shifts to getting things back to normal.
So it's about rebuilding, restoring, and resuming operations.
Exactly. Recovery involves eradicating any malware, restoring data from backups, rebuilding compromised systems, and getting everything back online and functioning as it should. Remember those time measurements we talked about earlier, RTO and RPO? They play a critical role in guiding the recovery process.
Right, because those measurements tell you how quickly you need to recover and how much data loss you can tolerate.
Exactly. But recovery is not just about getting systems back up and running. It's also about remediation, which focuses on identifying the root cause of the incident and taking steps to prevent it from happening again.
So it's about learning from your mistakes and strengthening your defenses.
Precisely. Remediation might involve patching vulnerabilities, improving security configurations, implementing new security controls, or even revising policies and procedures.
So it's about addressing the underlying weaknesses that allowed the incident to occur in the first place.
Exactly. And the final stage of incident response is lessons learned, where you reflect on the entire process, identify what went well, what could have been done better, and what changes you need to make to improve your incident response capabilities.
So it's about turning a negative experience into a positive opportunity for growth and improvement.
Precisely, lessons learned is a crucial step because it helps you continuously refine your incident response plan and ensure you're better prepared for the next security challenge.
This has been incredibly insightful. Incident response is clearly a complex and multifaceted process requiring careful planning, coordination, and expertise, but we're not done yet. Okay, what else do we need to cover in the realm of cybersecurity best practices?
Let's talk about two processes that are crucial for maintaining a secure and stable environment: patch management and change management. These are like the routine maintenance tasks that keep your digital house in order.
Those sound pretty straightforward. What's the gist of patch management?
Patch management is all about keeping your systems up to date with the latest security fixes. It's like making sure your software is vaccinated against known viruses and vulnerabilities.
So patch management is all about staying ahead of the curve when it comes to software vulnerabilities. It's like getting those regular checkups at the doctor to make sure everything's running smoothly.
That's a great way to put it. Patch management involves a systematic process of identifying, evaluating, prioritizing, and deploying patches in a controlled and timely manner. It's not just about installing the latest updates, it's about doing it strategically to minimize risks and disruptions to your operations.
That makes sense. You wouldn't want to install a patch that ends up breaking something else in your system. So how do you navigate this process effectively?
It starts with vigilance. You need to actively monitor for new vulnerabilities and patch releases. This involves staying informed about the latest threats and security advisories, subscribing to vendor notifications, and leveraging threat intelligence feeds. Think of it like keeping your finger on the pulse of the cybersecurity world, knowing what's coming and being ready to respond.
So you're constantly scanning the horizon for potential storms. What happens once you've identified a patch that needs to be applied?
Before rushing into installation, it's crucial to evaluate the patch. This involves making sure it's compatible with your systems and doesn't introduce any new problems. It's like checking the ingredients of a new recipe before you start cooking. You want to make sure it won't cause any unexpected reactions or leave a bad taste in your mouth.
So you're doing your due diligence, ensuring the patch is a good fit for your environment.
Exactly. Once you've confirmed compatibility, the next step is prioritization. Not all patches are created equal. You need to assess the severity of the vulnerability and the potential impact on your organization. Think of it like triage in an emergency room. You treat the most critical patients first.
So you're prioritizing the patches that address the most urgent and impactful vulnerabilities.
Precisely. Once you've prioritized, you can schedule and deploy the patches. It's often best to do this during off-peak hours to minimize disruption to your operations. It's like scheduling road construction at night to avoid traffic jams during the day.
So you're being mindful of the impact on your users and trying to minimize any downtime.
Exactly. And after the patches are installed, it's essential to verify that they've been applied correctly and haven't broken anything else. It's like test driving your car after a repair to make sure everything is working properly.
So it's a multi-step process of checks and balances along the way. What about documentation? Is that important in patch management?
Absolutely. Documentation is crucial throughout the entire patch management process. You need to keep detailed records of which patches have been applied when they were installed, and any issues that arose. It's like keeping a logbook for your car, noting down every service and repair.
Just if something goes wrong, you have an audit trail to help you troubleshoot and pinpoint the cause of the problem.
Precisely. But patch management isn't a standalone activity. It's actually part of a broader framework called change management.
Change management. How does that fit into the picture?
Think of change management as the overarching governance structure that ensures all changes to your IT environment are made in a controlled and systematic manner.
So change management is about having a process for making sure any changes, whether it's a patch, a new software installation, or a hardware upgrade, are implemented safe and smoothly.
You got it. It starts with a formal change request that outlines the proposed change, its purpose, and its potential impact on the organization. It's like submitting a building permit to the city, providing detailed plans and specifications for your construction project.
So you're providing transparency and justification for the change you want to make.
Exactly. Then the change request goes through an impact assessment to determine the potential risks and benefits of the change. This involves analyzing the potential impact on systems, users, data, and business processes. It's like conducting an environmental impact study to assess the potential effects of your construction project on the surrounding area.
So it's about weighing the pros and cons, making sure the benefits of the change outweigh the risks.
Precisely based on the impact assessment, the change request needs to be approved by the appropriate stakeholders. This might involve different levels of approval depending on the severity of the change. It's like getting your building plans approved by the city council, ensuring that they meet all the necessary requirements and regulations.
So it's not just a one-person decision, it's a collaborative process involving multiple levels of oversight.
Exactly. And once the change is approved, it needs to be carefully plan tested and implemented. It's like building your construction project in stages, making sure each phase is completed successfully before moving on to the next.
So it's about having a structured approach, not just winging it and hoping for the best.
Precisely. And throughout the entire change management process, communication is key. You need to keep all stakeholders informed about the status of the change, any potential impacts, and the timeline for implementation. It's like keeping the community informed about the progress of your construction project, addressing any concerns, and providing regular updates.
So it's about transparency and collaboration, making sure everyone is on the same page and understands the impact of the changes being made.
Exactly. Change management and patch management go hand in hand, ensuring that all modifications to your IT environment are handled in a controlled and secure manner.
This has been incredibly helpful. It's clear that managing patches and changes effectively is crucial for maintaining a secure and stable IT environment. But let's not forget about those pesky little programs that are constantly trying to infiltrate our systems and wreak havoc. Let's talk about malware.
Malware, the bane of the digital world. It's like those persistent weeds that keep popping up in your garden no matter how hard you try to get rid of them.
With so many different types of malware out there, it can be hard to keep up. Can you give us a rundown of the most common types?
Absolutely. Let's start with the classics viruses. These are pieces of malicious code that can infect your computer and spread to other systems. They often rely on human actions like clicking on a malicious link or opening an infected attachment to unleash their payload.
So viruses are like digital hitchhikers waiting for someone to unknowingly give them a ride.
That's a great analogy now. Worms are another type of malware that spreads like wildfire. These nasty little programs can self-replicate and spread across networks without any human intervention. They can exploit vulnerabilities in your systems to gain access and then spread rapidly from one computer to the next.
So worms are like the digital equivalent of a highly contagious virus, spreading rapidly from one host to another.
Exactly. Now let's talk about Trojans. Those masters of disguise, these deceptive programs hide their true intentions behind a seemingly harmless facade. They might disguise themselves as a game, a utility, or even a legitimate software update. But once you install a Trojan, it can open a backdoor to your system, allowing an attacker to take control.
So Trojans are like wolves in sheep's clothing, tricking you into letting them in. It's amazing how sneaky these malware creators can be.
It's a constant cat and mouse game. Now, another type of malware that has become increasingly prevalent and dangerous in recent years is ransomware. This nasty piece of code can encrypt your files, effectively locking you out of your own data and then demand a ransom payment to decrypt them.
So ransomware is like digital kidnapping, holding your data hostage until you pay up. It sounds terrifying.
Wow. It can be incredibly disruptive and costly for individuals and organizations alike. Now, let's talk about rootkits. Those stealthy and insidious pieces of malware that burrow deep into your operating system. Rootkits often hide their presence and make them extremely difficult to detect and remove. They can give attackers persistent access to your system, allowing them to spy on your activities, steal your data, or even take control of your computer.
So rootkits are like digital spies operating in stealth mode and gathering information without your knowledge.
Precisely. And of course, we can't forget about spyware. This type of malware is specifically designed to monitor your online activities, stealing your passwords, credit card numbers, and other sensitive information. Think of it as those hidden cameras that secretly record your every move.
So spyware is like having digital peeping toms looking over your shoulder and recording your every move. This is scary stuff. With so many different types of malware out there, how do you even begin to protect yourself?
That's a great question. The first line of defense is prevention. It's about making your digital environment as inhospitable to malware as possible. One effective strategy is to use an allow list, sometimes called a whitelist.
An owl list? What's that?
It's a list of approved applications that are allowed to run on your systems. Any program that's not on the list is blocked, effectively preventing unknown or untrusted software from executing. Think of it as having a strict dress code at an exclusive club. Only those who meet the criteria are allowed entry.
So it's like having a digital bouncer at the door, only letting in the VIPs. That sounds like a pretty effective way to keep out the riffraff.
It can be very effective, but it does require careful management, especially in large organizations with diverse software. You need to constantly update the allow list to accommodate new software and make sure legitimate applications aren't inadvertently blocked.
Okay, what other preventative measures can we take?
Another important strategy is network segmentation. This involved dividing your network into smaller, isolated segments, making it harder for malware to spread. Think of it as building firewalls within your network containing any outbreaks to a smaller area.
So it's about damage control, limiting the blast radius of an attack.
Exactly. By isolating sensitive systems and data, you can reduce the potential impact of a malware infection, but let's be realistic. Even with the best preventive measures in place, some malware might still slip through the cracks. That's why detection is crucial.
So if we can't always prevent malware, we need to be able to spot it quickly and respond accordingly.
Exactly. And one of the most common ways to detect malware is to use signature-based scanners.
Signature-based scanners. How does this work?
Imagine you're a detective investigating a crime scene. You're looking for fingerprints, DNA, evidence, or any other unique identifiers that can help you identify the culprit. Signature-based scanners work in a similar way. They rely on a database of known malware signatures, which are unique patterns or characteristics that identify specific types of malware.
So it's like having a digital fingerprint database for malware, allowing you to recognize the bad guys when they show up.
Exactly. Signature-based scanners are very effective at detecting known malware, but they have one major weakness.
What's that?
They can't detect malware they've never seen before, those so-called zero-day threats.
Zero-day threats, those sound scary.
A zero-day threat is a vulnerability or exploit that's unknown to the security community and therefore has no patch or signature yet.
So it's like a stealthy ninja able to slip past the traditional defenses undetected.
Exactly. To combat zero-day threats, we need to use more sophisticated detection methods like heuristic scanners.
Heuristic scanners, how are those different from signature-based scanners?
Heuristic scanners don't rely on known signatures. Instead, they analyze the behavior of software looking for suspicious activities that might indicate malware.
So it's about recognizing patterns of malicious behavior rather than relying on specific fingerprints.
Precisely, heuristic scanners are better at detecting unknown threats, but they can also be more prone to false positives.
False positives. What's that?
A false positive is when the scanner mistakenly flags a legitimate program as malware. It's like setting off a car alarm when a cat walks by. It's annoying and can create unnecessary work for your security team.
Right. It's a bit like crying wolf. Too many false alarms can make people complacent and less likely to respond to real threats.
Exactly. Now, besides signature-based and heuristic scanners, we also have activity monitors. These are like those watchful security guards who patrol a building, keeping an eye out for anything suspicious. Activity monitors keep track of running processes, looking for any unusual or suspicious behavior that might indicate malware.
So they're like digital security cameras recording what's happening on your system.
That's a good analogy. And then there's change detection, which focuses on monitoring critical system files for any unauthorized modifications.
So if malware tries to sneak in and tamper with a system file, change detection will sound the alarm.
Precisely. And of course, one of the most basic but essential things you can do is keep your anti-malware software up to date.
Right, because new malware is being created all the time, so you need to make sure your defenses can keep up.
Exactly. Continuous updates are crucial for staying ahead of the ever-evolving threat landscape.
Wow, we've covered so much ground today, from business continuity and incident response to data recovery forensics and malware protection. It's clear that cybersecurity is a multifaceted and constantly evolving field.
It certainly is, and it's a field where knowledge is power. The more you understand about the threats, the vulnerabilities, and the defenses, the better equipped you'll be to protect yourself, your data, and your organization.
Absolutely, and it's not just about the technology, it's also about having the right processes, policies, and most importantly, people in place.
You've got it. Cybersecurity is a team sport requiring collaboration, communication, and a shared commitment to security best practices.
Well said. This has been an incredible journey through the world of cybersecurity. Any final words of wisdom before we wrap up?
Remember that cybersecurity is a journey, not a destination. It's an ongoing process of continuous improvement, adaptation, and vigilance.
So it's not about achieving perfect security, which is probably impossible,
Yeah.
but about striving to be as secure as possible given the ever-changing threat landscape.
Exactly. And the more you learn, the more empowered you become to navigate this complex and dynamic world.
Well said. Thanks for sharing your expertise and insights. It's been a fascinating and informative discussion.
It's been my pleasure, and remember, the best defense is a good offense. Stay informed, stay vigilant, and stay secure.
That's great advice. And that concludes our exploration of Domain 7 of the CISSP exam. Until next time, stay curious and keep learning.